and a warm welcome to Digital Dialogues powered by CXO Digital Pulse. We are yet here again with another episode where we'll be having a conversation, something very interesting around technology. Now, India as a country, we know we are producing exceptional deep tech startups, organizations, which are very strong in research. They have solid science, they have real breakthroughs. Yet, very few of these ideas scale into global companies. The gap isn't about capability, it's about translation. There are moments when a startup moves from lab validation to market exposure, but then the rule changes. This is not about the funding or hype. It's about building companies that survive their first success and scale beyond borders. Today's conversation focuses on this transition, what founders underestimate, where momentum is lost, and how Indian deep tech can move from promising to global credible organizations. And for this, we have a very special guest on board today. Please welcome Dr. Sunil Shekhawat. He's a well known figure in the deep tech startup community. He's the founder and CEO of Sanchi Connect, and he is also credited with developing the largest tech startup programs under the NASSCOM umbrella in the past. A very warm welcome, Dr. Sunil.
Thank you. Thank you, Pratik. Glad to be here.
It's indeed our pleasure. So, Dr. Sunil, without any further delay, I'll jump on my very first question. That, many deep tech startups clear the hardest milestone, which is the technical proof. But then they stumble immediately after. In your experience, what is this fundamental changes which happen when these startups move from it works to the market is watching? And where are these founders often unprepared for that shift?
Okay. Thank you. This is a good question to start with, must say. In my experience over the last 1 decade, more than a decade now, uh, one thing is common among all of these deep tech founders or startups is these are essentially the brainchild of people who comes with very, very strong technical background. And these people have spent years and decades into inside labs, doing hardcore research, discovering things which never existed on the planet. Now, of course, there are pros and cons of every approach. Now, the good thing is these people are able to build technologies which nobody could have thought of. The flip side of the story is they are not in touch. They are not that hands-on to deal with the non-tech environment around them. Right? When I say non-tech environment, it's the investors, it's the customers, it's the prospective partners. Uh, so that becomes a very specialized skill to acquire for these people. The moment they clear their technical validation, because now you have to get the technology out of the lab environment. You want people to have business conversations with you, which you are not prepared of, right? So that's where things change drastically, and a lot of times I say it's very hard to move, to change the whole persona or personality of a person from a hardcore researcher to a business guy. So that's where the importance of team comes into picture, where you as a founder of the technology are expected to bring in somebody who is your trustworthy, who understand and who has the same vision in your line, and who is able to visualize the scale and the application part of the work that you have done over last few years or decades, whatever you spent in building it. So finding out people turns out to be a bigger challenge then, who can join you in this kind of challenging journey. And that's where I think a lot of founders struggle. I will call them researchers more than a founder. A lot of researchers struggle. You're able to build a technology, but when it comes to getting it out of the lab in an environment where the whole perspective or the whole the whole scenario changes, you struggle. So that's where I think a lot need to change, and that's where a lot of times we see that startups, these researchers are able to gain when they are incubated in some incubation center, and which is able to get them in touch with, and they keep on sensitizing them with by getting them in conversations with the industry. So yeah, I hope this answers your question.
Def- Definitely. And you have brought a very valid point, because that core team is really important, because the way the science or the technology is important, at the same time, that business acumen is also very important when you are building that startup. So you have definitely brought an important point. And another one thing, Dr. Sunil, you mentioned that, as these are core researchers, and either they need to do that transition in themselves as an individual, or they need to have that team on board. But is there any specific movement or a stage that you think in that startup journey where they can easily identify that, now, instead of having that competitive advantage, as in the science, the technology being a competitive advantage, too much of research mindset is bringing friction? So is there any step, any stage, or an early movement that can really help us to identify where they need to take that pause to understand this required transition, or this required need of a team member with a business acumen to bring on board?
So, so there are two ways of, in my opinion, there are two ways of building such kind of technologies. One is you're building it because you took a challenge that this thing does not exist, I can do it, right? Let me try my hands, I can do it, right? The other is, if you really want to sustain it and you really want to give it a face, you need to have some vision around what is going to be that thing which will keep it alive, right? And for
Okay.
that matter, the researcher need to spend time talking to people who are not from technology, who are from the industry, whether it is the existing startups, or the industry which could be a potential buyer, or whoever is who's coming from the business side. Because unless you don't have that thing in mind, that at some point when the research will finish, what is the future of it? Is it something which will live its life within the four walls of the lab, or is it something which you really want to inject a real life in the form of a company, or in the form of a place which employs a few hundreds and thousands of people, right? In form of something which really solves the problem, right? So that sensitization of people who are deeply involved in research is required. And
Okay.
I know it's a very challenging task, because it's a complete mind shift, because I see a lot of time researchers being very, very introvert, not so open in terms of talking about what they are doing. And it sometimes becomes a hurdle for them in due course. But that's where the trustworthiness is needed. And I see, this is where the local ecosystems, and I'll keep on pitching the incubation centers, because I personally feel that incubation centers play a very important role, because it's not just the infrastructure they provide you an ecosystem where you get to meet such kind of people who injects that kind of thought process in your head. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, great. There's another thing, Dr. Sunil, that, when we talk about these deep tech startups or the ecosystem, they often require a very high bar of credibility in the global market, because that's the core. While the technology is there, but how much credible you are. So if a founder had, say, suppose 6 months to say a year to earn that trust, where should they invest first? Is it the product validation that they need to focus, ecosystem or partnership, or is it being out and out there in the market to market themselves? So what is it, and where do you feel the biggest mistake that usually founders make to identify, or the loop that they are unable to complete?
I think you've already answered the question. It's a blend of all. When you're
Okay.
building something, it can't be you are building. You need a break. At times you always need a break. So that break has to be talking to people, participating in events, being part of some open forums, learn and see what's happening around you. All of this is needed for a founder to really mature into in a researcher, I would say. I'll not call him a founder for now. In a researcher to translate into a founder. And I see people lack on this front. They believe, and I see most of the times uh, when you're building a deep tech product, you need a lot of resources. And when I say resources, it is largely backed by cash, right? People who invest in you. Now, most of the time, what I see is founders would start talking to investors when they reach a certain stage and they need money. Understand that the whole ecosystem, the whole world operates on trust. It's relationship first game. You have to venture, you have to invest in building those comfort, those relationships, whether it is with the customer or investors. You have to nurture those relationships before you get to that zone where people start taking you seriously for the investment, right? So if I have to raise capital 2 years down the line, I should start being visible, being a proactive participant of forums where these kind of people exist. That's
Okay.
where a lot of times I see people lacking, uh, which really backfires.
Okay. And there's another thing I would like to check on this, because at times the technology is either too advanced for the current scenario, I would say. Many a times the technology is good, but how do you feel? Are they able to bridge that gap of a wonderful technology to have a proper use case scenario where people say that, it's a useful technology? Or they think that, it's too soon for this technology to even, assess and invest in it?
So applications are always simple. It's the technology which is complex, right? So it's easy to open Google Maps and use it, but the kind of tech which is going into it is the complexity, right? It's always like that. If your use case is complex, then the whole journey becomes a very difficult puzzle to solve. uh, Technology always has to play that role where and something which has taken years to get built, there is a reason it has taken years to get built, right? But at
Mhm.
the same time, the answers are simple. The most complex answers are difficult to handle, and I see I would in fact rather reframe it: the most simple answers are the most complex technologies which are operating in the hindsight.
Okay, great. And as we are talking about ecosystem, there's a lot of grants and policies that are being even pushed by the government. There are pilots, there are some, they are there to support them. But yet, it's been observed that, many startups still get stuck. So, how can founders really leverage all these national support and all these help and ecosystem that is out there to offer them without being actually very much dependent on them? It should be more of a support rather than a dependent system. So, what's the cleanest entry or say exit path from this heavy growth and this ensuring that they do have that reputable revenue also, because eventually they are founders, they need that kind of inflow of revenue as well.
So be part of a good credible incubation centers. Go to Sign IIT Bombay or SIIC IIT Kanpur or go to FITT. Go to any of the reputed incubation center and you'll find the whole ecosystem there. Grants, in the last 1 decade, I think Indian government has done a commendable job in mobilizing grants at that stage where the VCs and private investors don't operate. And it has served the whole purpose also. And now India itself as a country is moving to a new altogether into a new orbit with ANRF, RDI funds, all that getting mobilized. at a altogether different scale, which nobody could have ever imagined 10 years back. Now, grants are for, till now the grants have operated, and grants always continue to operate at a very early stage when when private players are not ready to look at it, and they're looking for validation. Private money comes at a very different cost, right? Uh, now, unfortunately, we have seen that while incubation centers were created, were given grants for the purpose that convert your idea into a MVP or a prototype, so that private investors start taking you seriously, and then you become part of their overall journey and all that. A lot of time founders get to the comfort of the grants, and we call them grantpreneurs. A lot of time I see, and this happens most of the time I see in smaller towns. If you go to the tier 2 ecosystems, when I say tier 2, it doesn't mean the tier 2, but the states which are a little below the Bangalore's and Delhi's of the world. Now, you'll find a good set of pedigree of founders who are grantpreneurs, who are just surviving on grants. And every approach has pros and cons, and I think the whole positive, there are positive outcomes of it, but it has also spoiled some section of the entrepreneur society, I would say, with the grants. There are some reforms which are certainly needed. I personally believe that grants are for a very specific purpose, and these should be used for that. It cannot be, there should be asterisks around how, when, who, all of those aspects need to be made more clear. But with Indian VC ecosystem growing, I think I don't see a gap nowadays in terms of taking an idea which involves developing a deep technology to the market and then further scaling up. I think right from that ideation to a Series C or a D, you have enough number of uh, players operating from the financial side who are there to support you.
Okay, great. Uh, so, Dr. Sunil, what I've understood is that, definitely the capability is there, the ecosystem exists. So, as we are almost closing the conversation, we are towards the end. Any top one or two things that come to your mind that you would like to advise to all these tech startups? Maybe, two must do things and two must not things for these startups to ensure that they are pretty much on the track to their for the startup and eventually attain that kind of scalability and recognition.
So a must do would be, please step out of your office, step out of your lab, spend some time talking to peers, talking to people from the industry where you think your technology is going to make sense, so that you are better prepared for a future, for a healthy future of your company. Uh, what not to be done? Don't be so cozy about your ideas. Nobody can steal it. Trust me, I mean, it's about the execution. It's always about the implementation. If there are one thing which is very commonly said in India is, every nook and corner there are ideas floating, but how many startups, how many successful companies coming out, we know that it's always a few, and it always belongs to the people who implement it, who have the capability to execute. So just
Okay.
be clear that you're going to be differentiated based on your execution, right? Not on the idea.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Sunil. And I think the message is pretty clear. We have the capability. Let's hold on to that, but let's also ensure, because networking is something which will make you go places, that will gain that kind of visibility, that attention that you as founder of these deep tech startups really require. Because until unless that visibility is there, your technology, your wonderful deep technology will not get that kind of attention, visibility, and the space on the stage in this globe. So ensure we move in that place where we have that kind of support system. The government has numerous policies. Let's take advantage of all these support system, the ecosystem that exist. There are multiple organizations which are there to support you. Let's leverage, let's understand. But yes, At the core of it, you need to build that kind of team which really helps you hold the ground and at the same time help you reach the sky. I think the next generation of this Indian deep tech are definitely a winner, but it's just that they need to define by what they invent and how they intentionally would like to carve a path for themselves to scale up and higher. Thank you so much, Dr. Sunil, for your insights. It was great having this conversation with you.
Thank you, Pratik. Thank you so much.
And a special thanks to all our viewers of this episode. Thank you for being with us. Do continue watching the space for more such episodes where you will take a new lens, a new perspective, a new scope on how technology is creating those wonders and helping us in various formats. So, do continue for such insightful discussions at Digital Dialogues powered by CXO Digital Pulse. Till then, take care and goodbye.